Hey, Originals listeners. I remember reading somewhere a number of years ago that there was this long period of time when the band Tears for Fears would infuriate audiences by absolutely refusing to play Everybody Wants to Rule the World at their live shows. It's an aggressive, kind of hilarious act, but I think in a way it's understandable. Recording artists tend to be identified with their biggest hits, or in the case of the vast majority of them, their only hit. As a younger man, I think my tendency was to demean those so-called one-hit wonders. What was the matter with these people? Must have been a fluke, right? Anybody can write one hit, but they must not have had what it takes to become a Tom Petty or a Fleetwood Mac. But now, at 50, looking back at my own career and having this very realistic sense of how hard it is to make even one thing that endures, I have a newfound respect for anyone who creates anything that's memorable or instantly recognizable, as well as a knee-jerk dislike for the term one-hit wonder. In 1981, my guest, Toni Basil, released this song, Mickey. If you're as Asian as I am, you'll instantly imagine Basil in her purple and red cheerleading uniform from that iconic video. It turns out, her own cheerleading uniform from Las Vegas High School. And here's the thing that now totally, in the words of the song, blows my mind. Antonia Cristina Basilata, performing as Toni Basil, was 39 years old when she had a hit with Mickey. And even though she was far from a household name when she had that hit, she'd already had an incredibly impressive career as a dancer, singer, and choreographer. Basil was one of the original go-go dancers in the mid-60s TV show Shindig. She danced in and choreographed various Beach Blanket and Elvis films. She co-created The Lockers, which first brought hip-hop to the masses in the early 70s. And I personally remember thinking that the breakdancing craze started around 1984 with the release of the movie Breakin', which starred, not coincidentally, Shabba-Doo, another founding member of The Lockers. But The Lockers were popping and locking a full decade before that. Basil's been referred to as a show business Zelig. She's seen and witnessed things that make a pop culture junkie like myself fantastically envious. Just two examples. Toni danced in the 1964 Rat Pack vehicle Robin and the Seven Hoods. This was the movie that was filming when Frank Sinatra's frenemy, JFK, was assassinated. And Toni can be seen on Sinatra's arm as he sings My Kind of Town. And you undoubtedly remember the scene from 1970's Five Easy Pieces when Jack Nicholson creatively orders toast from a diner waitress who says they don't serve side orders of toast.
Coffee. Number 2, chicken salsa. Hold the butter, the lettuce, the mayonnaise, and a cup of coffee. Anything else?
Yeah, now all you have to do is hold the chicken, bring me the toast, give me a check for the chicken salad sandwich, and you haven't broken any rules.
You want me to hold the chicken, huh?
I want you to hold it between your knees.
Some of that giggling that you just heard was from Toni Basil, sitting in the booth opposite Jack Nicholson, playing a pixie-haired lesbian. This is The Originals, and I'm your host, Andrew Goldman. I spent decades interviewing celebrities for magazines, the vast majority of whom were just there to sell something and shared very little of themselves. I created The Originals to interview cultural figures who actually had something to say, wanted to express something real. Toni Basil, as you're about to hear, has show business in her blood and is a total pro, respectful to her core of the various icons she's encountered. I personally love this episode for providing some first-hand perspective on so many things that I love. I decided I wanted to interview Basil after happening upon the memoir of a guy named Tosh Berman, whose father, Wallace Berman, remains a huge figure in modern art. Wallace Berman was a dominant part of this 60s Topanga Canyon scene, along with Toni and her then boyfriend, the actor Dean Stockwell. Now, Berman remembers Toni as a kind of person who united the Hollywood and art worlds. And here's what it was like having Toni Basil around. When he was a kid, Tosh remembers one day Toni introducing him to her good friend Brian Jones. And she also brought into his father's scene people like Neil Young and counted among her other work-related friends Elvis Presley, David Bowie, Mick Jagger, and John Lennon. Mark Rozzo, in his new book about Dennis Hopper and Brooke Hayward, Everybody Thought We Were Crazy, talks about Basil in similar ways as a major connector in this world who, for a moment, melded the worlds of show business and fine art. And here's what Tosh Berman concluded in his chapter about Basil. Why Toni wasn't as huge as Madonna is a complete mystery to me. Of the two, she was clearly the genius. Madonna fans, please don't at me. Welcome to the 14th episode of our third season, produced in proud partnership with Los Angeles Magazine. Toni Basil, welcome to the Originals.
Thank you.
I am so happy to talk with you. My brain is reeling from all of the research that I've been doing. You know, it's funny. I think that there are some people who will recognize your name, and I find this quite hysterical, after having gone through your body of work through, 5 decades, to see occasionally the term one-hit wonder appended to your name. What do you think? I mean, I think it's ridiculous, and I feel like as a 50-year-old man now who doesn't have one hit to his name.
But Andrews, let me stop you. That just refers to that song. Yes, other people don't know, all the lanes that I've traveled, but I started out as a singer, choreographer. You know that my parents were all in show business. They're famous vaudevillians. I've stood on the side of the stage in the wings since 1947, Chicago Theater, then the Sahara Hotel. I'm so grateful to even be in show business. I came, from American musical movies and theatrical, like live stage shows, like my dad played. So that was always a singer and dancer. Not necessarily did Mitzi Gaynor and those people or Fred Astaire have hit records. We thought I was going to travel down that lane. But, everything changed by the time the 60s happened and the 70s happened. And I became a choreographer. I did some things like I did Anita in West Side Story in the 60s, and with almost the whole original cast. I also recorded a song called Breakaway in 1967.
I know. We're going to get to all of this.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Yes.
Hold on.
All right, go ahead.
Hold on. We'll get to that. But the bottom line is, as a choreographer, which was the lane I was traveling throughout the 60s, the movies I was in, Easy Rider, 5 Easy Pieces, which weren't exactly musicals, I was grateful by the time the 80s came to have a record, to be able to do videos and have a hit record. Oh my God. Oh my God. And the video is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the song has lasted like an anthem. My blood does not curdle when I hear One Hit Wonder.
Well, it curdles
really
when
doesn't. And quite frankly, it doesn't happen that...
It curdles my blood on your behalf.
Well, let it go.
Yeah, I got to let it go? All right, I'm going to let it go. But I want to, you know what? What's interesting about this is going through all of your credits, you're a triple threat in that you have several recordings through, various decades. You're an actor, and we'll talk about that later. And of course, you're a dancer. Which was the dream?
When I was in high school and when I was in grammar school studying dance, and my dad was the orchestra leader at the Chicago Theater, he did stage shows. I stood on the side of the stage. I watched the stage show and then a movie, stage show, movie. He did maybe 4 to 7 shows a day. And I saw the American musicals. And at the time, there was no division in movies. Mitzi Gaynor, Sid Charisse, Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire, they all sang and danced. There was no separation. And there was a separation eventually, but until there was music videos where I could sing and dance once again.
I'm trying to get over the fact that your father did you say 4 to 7 shows a day?
Yeah. And no day off.
Well, let's talk.
He had 1 month off a year.
Well, let's talk about your folks for a minute. So you grew up in Vegas, where your father was a band leader, and you're.
Well, I also grew up in Chicago, where he was the orchestra leader at the Chicago Theater.
Okay.
One of the greatest theaters, ever.
But your mother and her sisters were vaudevillians, correct?
They were famous vaudevillians. Yes, Billy Wells and the Four Fays.
I think that there are people who will be listening to this and they will have heard the term, but they won't actually understand what vaudeville is. Can you explain it?
Vaudeville was early theater. And they had crazy acts. But, all these famous acts that became famous, the comics, they all started out in vaudeville. And it was one step above circus. but it was on a theater stage, not in, a ring. And there were comics and there were singers and there were jugglers. And my mom's act did a crazy act. I mean, they were almost, I would say they were acrobatic comedians. And you can go on my YouTube channel, Toni Basil's House, and you will see Mom's two older sisters who started out before her with Uncle Billy in a silent film, 1919, dancing for 45 seconds. And then you can also see them on the Ed Sullivan Show, 1964, the same show that the Beatles premiered at.
That's what shocked me going through was seeing that. So this is, was it a similar act that spanned from 1920 to the 60s?
Yes. Once all the younger siblings came over from Australia to join Christine, Iva, and Uncle Billy, which was Uncle Pat and my mother, then they were all of a sudden Billy Wells and the Four Fays instead of Billy Wells and the Eclair Twins. And that's when they became a famous vaudevillian act. And that act was not just the same damn act, but it was the same orchestration. And all that changed were the costumes. And as kids got married, they replaced them.
Well, when I was watching the Ed Sullivan thing, did they always have a bit where somebody would wear a huge hat and have like...
Yes,
and
that was my Uncle Billy's bit in the beginning.
Can you describe,
the hat?
it?
Yeah, it was a very, an old vaudevillian trick of the hat goes over the head. You poke eyes in the hat so you can see out of it. And then your stomach is the face.
Exactly.
And if you could roll your stomach, then it looked like the little man, which they called, was talking. And after Uncle Billy passed away, my Aunt Christine got in that outfit. And she became the little man.
I remember seeing this act. And did somebody steal this act? 'Cause I remember seeing this act on... Do you remember that show, Real People? They would have
No.
Well, they would have people whistling with their belly buttons with huge hats on.
Yeah, well, that was, very vaudevillian-esque. No, that was very, the hat with the stomach was very vaudevillian-esque. Actually, when we did one of the Bette Midler shows that we created for her, when she sang "Go Into the Chapel," we actually had her in that little man outfit.
Oh, no kidding.
So, people reuse, reinvent.
Did she expose her belly, and did her belly sing?
No, you don't expose your belly.
You don't expose
You're covered.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're covered. My mistake. I got it. When I saw it on Real People, they exposed their belly and they put lipstick on
Well, I know, but that was what?
that was
50 years
that was
later.
The 70s.
50 years later.
So when you watched this, I mean, when you watched your dad and when you watched your mom and your mom's sisters and your uncle, I mean, did you say the show business life is definitely for me, or did you just say, God, I want to become an accountant? No, I'm done with this.
It wasn't. I didn't say anything. It was just assumed.
It was.
I just saw the whole family on the stage, and I just thought that's how everyone lived. I mean, I went to ballet class. I went to school, ballet class, and then went to the theater. And trust me, I loved it.
Well,
I loved it.
Well, the act was on Ed Sullivan around 64. You were never part of the act, correct? How did you?
Absolutely not.
How did you escape the act?
Well, it wasn't
Or how did you not become part of the act?
Well, because I went to high school, I was a head cheerleader, and I wasn't an acrobat. I was a really, really good ballet dancer. And I was much more into, cheerleaders are into contemporary music, whatever was happening at the time. And I think they didn't want me in the act. They wanted me to be a singing, dancing movie star.
They did. So they had...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Did they survive to see you become...
Not really. Not really. Mickey was number one, 1982, top of the Billboard charts. And I think I was maybe 40 by then. I was 40 in those videos looking like I was 22.
Well, I got to ask you about this. I've seen various accounts. People will remember this video. It was an iconic video, but you're wearing pigtails and you're wearing a cheerleading outfit that says Las Vegas High School. I've heard various accounts that it was a reproduction of your actual high school outfit from 20 years or 20.
It is.
But it's not. It's not the outfit?
I wore the letter sweater. It was a different skirt, and it's hanging in my closet. And every now and then I put that out on my Instagram, which is official Toni Basil. Yeah.
But
no,
so
that's,
it was not
that's
the,
the
it was
letter
not the,
sweater.
it was not the same, because that to me seemed amazing that you had kept perhaps the original.
I keep everything.
But you didn't keep
hoard
the original,
all my outfits.
But you didn't keep the original cheerleading outfit from when you were in high school to wear.
I just said I was wearing the original sweater.
Oh, it was the sweater. Okay. I'm turning 50. I'm hard of hearing and hard of comprehension.
I'm 78, and I'm way ahead of you.
You are very, very sharp. So, did you think that you would be a classical ballet dancer?
No. I mean, I thought I would use it. I didn't think I would go into a company because, in the 50s and in the 60s, when I was really heavily studying as a child, I was also very, very, very much into contemporary music. Contemporary music until Twyla Tharp came along was never, ever in ballet. It was Swan Lake and etc. And I just always thought of that American musical.
Well, speaking of, let's continue in the chronology, because you were at and actually working as an assistant choreographer, right, at the Tammy Show, the famous.
Yes, and I was the assistant choreographer to David Winters, and I became his assistant. That was like 1962, 63, and I was his assistant almost straight through the 60s until he went to New York to do Hullabaloo. We had already done Shindig, we were doing the Tammy Show, Doris Day movies, Viva Las Vegas, Anne Margaret, Elvis Presley. When he moved to New York to do Hullabaloo, he wanted me to come with him, and then all of a sudden he left town, and I was the one that started to get the choreography jobs. Well, and I was getting ready to do Easy Rider.
Well, you're skipping ahead. We haven't even talked.
I'm not. That's it.
No, that's not it. We got to talk about the Tammy Show, because because I think that this is something that's going to tax people's memory, and I'm going to tell them what it is. It was a show in 1964 in Santa Monica. Tammy stands for Teenage Awards Music International, and this was. Let me just list the acts that played this show. Beach Boys, Marvin Gaye, James Brown, the Rolling Stones, the Supremes, and Chuck Berry played this, among many, many others. This was a famous show because this was a show where, to his great consternation, James Brown learned that he would not be closing the show, that he would be opening for the Rolling Stones. And
no, he didn't open for the Rolling Stones.
He played before
They were last on the bill.
Yes.
They were last on the bill. And Jack Nicholson decided, because he booked the show and he booked the order of the show. And James went before the Rolling Stones. The Rolling Stones closed the show. He didn't open for the Stones because by the time James had gotten on the stage, the show was already 2 hours long.
Now, Keith Richards has said this is possibly the worst decision that the Rolling Stones have made in show business, trying to follow James Brown.
I don't think they made that decision. I think Andrew Oldham made that decision and Jack Nicholson made that decision.
Yeah, Andrew Oldham, I should note, for those too young to remember, was their very well-known publicist, not their manager, but their publicist, and he created their image in a lot of ways. The early days, at least, right? I mean, that's pretty much it, right?
Well, I didn't know Andrew Pope personally. That was the first time I met all of them that day. It was the first time all of us in the green room saw the Supremes. We couldn't believe Diana Ross. I mean, we were blown away. Everybody was blown away by each other because, once again, there was not YouTube. Yeah. If you didn't go to a live show, you didn't see these people. And we saw James Brown. We couldn't believe what we were seeing. I know the Stones, they all turned ashen, white, when they kind of realized they had to follow. But Mick had seen James at the Apollo that first week in New York because they had just gotten into New York in America, and that was 1 week into being in America. But let me tell you something. We saw the greatest theatrical act it was almost like the Ziegfeld Follies, what James Brown brought us. It was the full orchestra. It was dancers. It was singers. It was him. But he was doing R&B, street. It was a different kind of music. And you wanted to see him dance as much as you wanted to hear him sing. Yeah. Like Tina Turner. You want to see her dance as much as you want to see her sing. So Andrew Oldham had the sense to wait to have a sound problem. They waited about 20 minutes before the Stones went on. And David Winters and I went, well, let's sit on the side of the stage and watch this bloodbath, And let me tell you something. Mick Jagger jumped up in the air with a tambourine. There was just the four of them. And Brian Jones with blonde hair, red sideburns, green eyes, turned his back to the audience. What? As a vaudevillian, I thought, oh my God, you can't turn your back to the audience. Mick jumped up in the air. He started dancing down this ramp that they had made for him, and not one damn person thought of James Brown again. And I'm telling you that's the truth. James, now, what you got to realize is we had just seen the two greatest acts in show business still to this day. Still to this day, there's been nothing that has ever topped a James Brown show, and the Stones are still, God love them, touring stadiums. So what we were seeing was history.
Well, this was history.
History.
James Brown would say in his memoirs years later that this was the most energetic show he'd done in his life, specifically because he was representing R&B versus, popular rock music.
I'm sure.
And this was, did you know this, Toni, that this, and this historian might be wrong, but this was where he actually first did the famous cape routine.
I can't believe that's true.
You don't think that's true? You think I think David Remnick in the New Yorker said that this was
can't believe that's true.
This was the first.
I would assume that's not true, only because they had done all these other shows in circuits. I just can't believe. When I saw the cape routine, I didn't think that was the first time he ever did it.
Everybody has to know the cape routine. I'm going to explain it to people. James Brown would have one of his guys would come with a cape during Please, Please, Please. And he would be let off because it looked like he was too broken up to be singing. And at a certain point, several times, he would throw off the cape and come back to the mic and continue the song.
Right. He's 5 times.
5 times
and
he would do it?
I could not believe, because, you only do 3 times in a row in theater. It's like 3 times and that's it. And I couldn't believe that, wow. Bobby Burnett threw the cape over him and walked with him. I couldn't believe it held for 5 times.
That's interesting. I didn't know there's a rule of 3. Phenomenal. There's a rule of 3s that you can only sort of
kind of. Yes, kind of.
1964 is the same year you appear, you solo, and also are the assistant choreographer on the Elvis Presley vehicle Viva Las Vegas.
That's right.
Now, this was with Anne Margaret, who he fell in love with on set, who was deemed sort of the female Elvis. She had her own major sex appeal. And you're in a dance scene where Elvis sings the Ray Charles number.
Yeah.
What I say.
See the girl with the red dress on. She can do the dog all night long.
And in the original, it was see the girl with the red dress on. But they changed.
She can do the dog all night long.
She can do the dog all night long, and you do this dance, which I assume, did that dance exist? It was you kind of like doing like a
well,
paddle.
No, you know what? I did the Watusi, and I held my hands up like a dog, on hind legs. So I kind of mixed the Watusi and that.
And it was quite adorable, but that was not actually
Thank you.
That was not actually a real dance, because I was looking at some of these dances.
Well, yeah. I mean, there was a dance called the dog. It wasn't really popular. Bobby Freeman did it when he did the swim. And also the arms in the song The Swim are like swimming arms, but the lower part is like a Watusi. And he also references the dance, the dog, in the song The Swim. So it was actually a dance, but not a dance that was popular like the swim, like the twist, like the jerk.
Well,
You know,
I wanted to ask you about this. How, because this to me, I know maybe it's the same way things happen on TikTok. Where did these dances come from?
Kids.
Who invented the dances?
Kids,
And where did they
kids,
and where?
Kids. Well,
And did they spread like
all over.
viruses, or did people see?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That's right. And they happened they happened a couple of different ways. Sometimes a songwriter who hung out in the clubs to see what kids were doing, or hung out in high schools to see what kids were doing, they would see a dance and then they would write a song about the dance. Mostly the kids inspired these songwriters. Mostly.
So were these songwriters trying to sort of capitalize? If they could identify a dance and write a song about it, were they trying to maybe capitalize on the popularity of the dance?
Of course, they were all trying to write hits.
Yeah.
There were 45 records. They were all trying to write hits like people now. They scramble around looking for ideas, of course.
I'm looking at a list of dances. I know you know them all because you've actually done a video where you do all of them. The frog, the mashed potato, the shimmy, the swim, the jerk, the limbo, the monkey, the hully-gully. Now, do you remember, were there dances that people tried to have take off that just didn't, for whatever reason, take off? I mean,
Well, I would say the dog was one, but the last people to write songs about dances were Rufus Thomas. And he wrote, that was in the late 60s, and he wrote the push and pull, the breakdown, and those were the early songs and the early dances that were being done on Soul Train. And Soul Train was where you first featured a dance called the Campbell Lock, which was created by Don Campbell. But that dance was not a social dance. See, all those 60s dances, you faced each other and kind of courted the girl. And these dances were very simple. The twist is simple. The jerk is simple. The Watusi was simple. That's why they caught on. The Campbell Lock was not so simple. It attracted the greatest street dancers of that time.
we're going to talk about that. We got to get to that.
Okay,
We're going to get
but
to the Campbell Lock. I've got my chronology here. We're getting to the Campbell Lock. We can't leave Elvis yet, though, okay?
Well, let's try.
Okay. Wait, not yet. But
Because we're going to be here all night,
we're not.
Andrew.
No, this is going to be, okay. So Elvis, I remember, I don't know if you read both of the Peter Guralnick
I didn't.
books about Elvis.
I didn't.
But one thing that I always think about, I think of Elvis as a dancer, but it was really funny. I was reading, and I'm sure you know this guy, and I'm sure a lot of people are not going to know the name, but Gene Nelson, who was a great dancer. You know that name?
Of course.
Yes, of course. He was a great dancer in movies, and then he actually directed 2 of Elvis's films, and he was a choreographer, and I think he was in the original Oklahoma. But yeah, great dancer, and he directed Kissin' Cousins and Harem Scarum. And I just remember coming to this part in the book, and I had to look it up for you because I wanted to run it by you. This was in Careless Love. He said, Elvis was the handsomest son of a bitch that ever walked across the street, I mean, he couldn't dance worth a shit. He really couldn't. But he had these weird wiggles he produced. Now, you were a technical dancer, and you actually got to witness Elvis. I mean, could Elvis dance?
Of course. He had his own style, and that's why he became a star. Of course. But his style came from rockabilly. That's what his style came from. And musically, that was rockabilly at the time in the South. That's what he came from.
So,
And that kind of stance and those steps were rockabilly.
now this part of the chronology, see, this is what's interesting about your career is I can't tell exactly what kind of group you belong to. I've read that you're kind of a connector of people, but you were in these great kind of mainstream show business things, but you were also at this period dating Dean Stockwell, who was a great actor, who was friends with Dennis Hopper, and there was apparently this Topanga scene of like real artists, right, that you were a part of?
Yeah. Yeah, we lived in Topanga Canyon, and Neil Young lived there, and many artists lived there. And we were kind of, part of a group of people, actually the artists like Bruce Conner, Wallace Berman, Billy Al Bankston. They eventually became very famous artists.
Yeah.
They were young artists in the 60s, California artists, like Andy Warhol was, a New York artist. And they became Very, very, very famous. Well, we all hung out together with also the Mamas and the Papas. And there was just a group of us that all hung out.
But it seemed like there was this kind of current of kind of this bubbling of, alternative Hollywood that eventually sort of
exactly,
that would turn
because
into Easy Rider. But can you describe? I mean, did you feel like you were in two worlds?
no, I wasn't in two worlds. It was one world. There were separate avenues for all of us. Some painted, some danced, some sang, but we all as a group would get together.
This is Toni Basil's 1966 single Breakaway, which is perhaps now most famous because it serves as the soundtrack of the artist Bruce Conner's 5-minute avant-garde film of the same name. It's a film that features quick edits of a very sexy Toni doing various dances, in and out of various outfits, and in her underwear. Here's Dennis Hopper discussing Conner and the production of the film.
In my opinion, Bruce Conner's the most important artist of the 20th century. I remember in the merry-go-round at Santa Monica Pier, Dean Stockwell and myself held the lights as Toni Basil danced nude, and Bruce photographed her in Breakaway.
I want to know, Breakaway became a very famous art film. Was it a song first or a film first?
Bruce Conner made films. He was one of the most famous underground filmmaker. Dennis Hopper talks about Bruce being what he thought was maybe one of the greatest artists of our time, certainly of the 60s, with filmmaking, his collages. He's had huge tours all over the United States, all over the world, and they show that film, Breakaway.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if you're even, I mean, I don't know if you're quite hitting the importance so much. Hopper has basically said that Breakaway was in many ways the kind of cinematic influence for Easy Rider. Like he right?
Yes, well, I think it was Bruce's style of editing. He had done other films other than Breakaway, and his style of editing was definitely an inspiration for the acid scene in the graveyard.
Yeah. So Breakaway, we should say, is a 5-minute film. You can't see it anywhere. Toni has informed me that this is not something you can see on YouTube because it is only in museums, but it is very famous. It's 5 minutes, and it is of you. I think it's just, we can describe it as go-go dancing. Is that go-go dancing?
Well, I don't know. I did some go-go dancing. I did some leaping around. I changed outfits. It was very dramatic. I did not dance to my song. I am not lip-syncing my song. It's Bruce making footage of me, making a video of me, and then the track is Breakaway.
So did you write the song specifically for the film?
No, I didn't write the song. Ed Cobb.
Okay.
Ed Cobb wrote the song. He also wrote Soft Cell's Tainted Love. Yeah.
No way. Okay.
Yeah.
So Breakaway, it's a great song, and it's, can you tell me what go-go dancing is? Because I mean, Quentin Tarantino.
Well, we had talked about this.
Referred to you as the queen of go-go.
That's right. The dance. The yes.
But what is go-go? Where did that come from?
Well, go-go is all the different styles of music and dance steps of the 60s, like the jerk, like the Watusi, like the
I didn't
twist,
realize that.
and that's what go-go dancing is the style you danced in clubs to that music.
It always seemed, I mean, the Watusi and all those seemed sort of so G-rated, but I think of go-go as like PG.
What do you mean G-rated?
That was so innocent. You got the thumbs going
one
way,
absolutely.
And then you got
but
somebody
I'm
digging.
Sorry,
but I think like
this is.
I think of go-go.
You want my information? You want my history?
Yes.
This is why they were popular, because anybody could do them, and all of a sudden. The dance style that happened before was Lindy Hop. You had to hold on to a partner and you had to know what the hell the partner was doing. This freed you. You did the Watusi facing your partner. You didn't have to hold on. All of a sudden, every policeman, every nurse, anybody walking on the street went, I can do that. And that's why it became popular. And the most popular dances were the most simple to do. The twist, the jerk, The pony was very difficult. The pony was more what we use sometimes in those beach movies.
I can't even picture the pony. I'm going to have to, I mean, this is not a visual medium, so I'm going to have to, I promise I'm going to put a link to the pony in the show notes. But Go-Go seemed dirtier to me than the stuff that you would see, like the, you know.
Well, that's your imagination,
Okay.
because go-go dancing was the style that you did in the clubs.
Well, I remember then they'd put the go-go, they'd have like the cages and.
Yes, well, the girls were in the cages. That was the first time that happened. They came down from the ceiling. They were still in little fringe dresses, and they did those dances.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Head, 1968. It's the Monkees film. I think it was directed, it was conceived and written.
Bob Rafelson
directed it.
Jack Nicholson
wrote it. Supposedly, he was smoking weed when he wrote it, and then he kind of.
Oh, please. Everybody smoked weed.
No. But then, according to, I think, Rafelson said that he actually sort of conceived the plot line while on acid.
I have no idea.
Anyway, so.
Sounds like good promo.
Head is a very interesting film because everybody thinks of the Monkees as, you know, the prefab four. And you watch it and it is very druggy, trippy film. And you never realize that kind of the Monkees were that. Did the Monkees have that reputation as being squeaky clean? Was I just missing?
Well, you know, they were like the television version of the Beatles. So they were watered down, you know, and they were also a group that was put together by Rafelson. You know,
right.
They auditioned.
So Head, you have like, I think it's the most darling dance that you do with Davy Jones.
Well, yeah. Well, you know, Quentin Tarantino on Ion LA, when he said I was the goddess of go-go, he also, Quentin, who has a photographic memory, and of course that's no joke, he started to name everything I was ever in or danced in, and he mentioned Head, Daddy's song that I did with Davy Jones as one of his most famous 5 American musical movie numbers.
It's a beautiful number, it's
a fabulous.
I am going
number.
to put it on Daddy's song. It was I think co-written by Harry Nilsson, and you were just lovely in it.
Thank you.
I assume you choreographed.
Well, I choreographed it.
He was quite good too. Was he?
Well, he was a big Broadway star. You know, he won the Tony for Oliver as a child.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, he won the Tony Award for Oliver as a child, and he was a big English star also, and then he got cast, you know, as one of the Monkees.
1969's Easy Rider is now credited with making independent cinema commercially viable. I think the movie was made for something like $400,000, but grossed about $16 million. Peter Fonda starred in it, produced it, and co-wrote it with Dennis Hopper, who also directed it. Though Fonda nearly fired Hopper after seeing his behavior as a director. And the first thing they shot was the famous New Orleans acid trip sequence. During those first shooting days, Hopper berated everyone to the point that most of the crew quit. And because of the things that happened both on set and the legal wranglings over credit and money afterwards, Hopper actually barred Peter Fonda from attending his 2010 funeral. Now, Basil was there both at the inception of the film and, I assumed, the breakdown of the relationship. I want to play a clip of Basil and Fonda getting to know each other in a French Quarter brothel.
What?
Well, you paid for me, right?
Well, that was for my friend.
Oh, I don't...
Why don't I buy you a drink?
I don't drink.
I've got an idea. Let's go outside. We'll all go outside to Mardi Gras. Okay.
I remember sitting at a table at Dennis's house, and Dennis and Peter were talking about a film we're going to do. And Dennis said, I want it all shot at eye level. And Peter said, oh no, we want helicopter shots. And if you look at Easy Rider, it was all shot at eye level except for the very last scene when they were shot. And it pulls away with a helicopter shot. And let me tell you, they were the best two. What a match these two guys were. Wow.
You know, I've read this story before. I find it amazing that you're sitting at a dinner table this was kind of a famous gathering place, right? Dennis Hopper and Brooke Hayward's place.
Yes.
Now, Dennis Hopper, it seems like, had this kind of like crazy man personality. When they were talking about it, did you think that anything was ever going to get made?
No, I wasn't sure. I didn't think much of it, but all of a sudden, a half a year later, I was in Fred Roos's office auditioning.
Dennis made you audition?
Of course.
Why? He knows you. He knows what he's getting, right?
He knows me, but he didn't see me acting. I hadn't really. I had done some television, but people still read people for roles. Of course.
You and Karen Black both play prostitutes in New Orleans. You have a famous acid scene. An acid scene that I always assumed was done on acid, but
No, how dare you?
Why?
We're actors.
okay. Well,
You're that's naive of you.
Okay.
That's so naive of you to think.
I guess it sort of speaks to how accurately Dennis Hopper kind of captured an acid trip. I mean, I look at Peter Fonda sitting at
Well, it was also actually, that movie was scripted, but the graveyard was outlined. That was outlined, and a lot of that was improvisation. We were improvising. Dennis would give us the concept or the section, and we'd improvise.
Now this, and I feel like there have been various accounts of it. Now, Dennis Hopper, Peter Fonda nearly fired him because of his behavior in New Orleans.
No? Come on.
No,
Stop reading those books.
Why? The books, they're history. You don't think that they're history. So I,
Tell
me what happened, because
I don't, here's, all I know is when I was with them, they were planning the film. They had been planning the film for a long time. I auditioned at Fred Roos's office. The graveyard was the first scene that they shot in New Orleans. The scene that Karen and I did in the horror house, which in the movie precedes the graveyard, was the very last scene that was shot. The rest of the movie, if people are familiar with the movie, it's a road trip. I was not on that road trip, so I can't tell you what happened on that road trip.
Well, I thought that the cemetery scene, some stuff went down, because Peter Fonda, according to the Peter Biskin book, Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, never forgave Dennis Hopper in that acid scene for basically saying, I want you to relive the suicide of your mother. I want you to tell the Madonna how you felt about your mother offing herself. And you were there for that, right?
I wasn't there for Dennis saying that to Peter.
Oh, okay.
Why would I be, when you talk to the director and he's talking to you about a section that you're going to improvise, he's talking about the section you're improvising. I wouldn't be standing there with Dennis Hopper talking about a scene that Peter is going to improvise that I'm not in. Okay,
it's naive of me.
Yes.
So it sounds like it was a happy. Peter Fonda wasn't happy. He said lots and lots of things about it.
Look, it was the very first scenes that was shot for the film.
Yeah.
Dennis was always very intense. Peter was always very calm.
Yeah.
Dennis filled the room. Peter stayed calm and just kept him calm.
Yeah.
They were a great match. No matter what fights they had, no matter how much they hugged and kissed each other, it worked. That film changed the face of
it did.
filmmaking.
You were in a film that basically created the idea of independent film. And did it feel...
That's right.
Did it feel special when you were doing it?
No. All I knew is that when you're doing things and you're an actor and you're an artist, whether I'm doing Mickey, whether I'm doing Easy Rider, whether I'm doing the Tammy Show, you don't sit there and say, oh boy, this is iconic. Oh boy, where's this going to go? You do your work.
Yeah.
And because all these things that I've mentioned were extraordinarily creative, and we were all creating out of our gut.
Yeah.
We didn't have anybody up at Paramount telling us what to do. We were able to fly.
Yeah. In 1971, you founded with Don Campbell the Lockers, which I feel like there are going to be people who are going to be like, I've never heard of the Lockers. What are the Lockers? I am going to put a clip in the show. I think people who are my age think that hip hop dance was probably invented in the 80s. You were doing stuff in 1971 that basically brought what we now know.
Oh yeah, we changed the face of dance in street. There's no doubt about it. And I'd love you to link to us on Soul Train.
See, I thought that was actually very interesting because Don Campbell, I thought he actually started the Lockers with you because he left Soul Train when they refused to pay the dancers. That's not how it...
Well, part of that is true. Don had a song called The Campbell Lock that the song wasn't so great, but he was the most interesting, spectacular street dancer that I had ever seen since James Brown. So since I had a career in the 60s and a lot of connections, I brought him and that song around to people. And I brought him to the Dick Clark people. He was unknown, so they played his song on Radio Record. And it did mediocre. Because
on American Bandstand? Is that on American Bandstand?
Yeah, American Bandstand. Yeah. Because the song was nothing without Don performing. But they had seen Don in a little piece of footage that I had brought to them. Anyway, I got a call maybe a year later after Don had left he hadn't left the Soul Train yet. And they said, hey, are there more of that guy? Because we're doing the Roberta Flack special. This was the Dick Clark Company. And they said, can you put more people together with that style? Because we wanted to book the Alvin Ailey dancers, but we're having union problems. Or any of these kids in the union? I said, no, okay, great. They can work Taft-Hartley, which means you can work for 2 jobs without being in the union on television. And I cast a lot of the dancers that were, in the clubs that would be equivalent to Don. Because that dance attracted the greatest street dancers of the time. It wasn't social dance anymore. And I choreographed on the Roberta Flack special a group of kids, me included, and then Fred Lawrence, who eventually became our agent for years, was in Florida. He was CMA. He got in touch with me. He said, hey, I'm a Florida CMA agent. He was an agent for clubs. And there was a very similarity to the formation and the style of how I put together the style of the Lockers, not the dance steps. The dance steps were Don and the guys. But it was very vaudevillian and not unlike my aunt's act.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, now, it was called the Campbell Lock. People, if they know anything about hip-hop dance, know about locking. Now, he invented this, correct?
Yes,
How did he come up with this?
Well, improvisation. That's how people come up with things in the street, is improvisation. And what happened is that when we did the Roberta Flack special, it was a mix of girls, of guys. And so we slowly weeded out what was eventually going to be the Lockers. And let me tell you, Shabadoo, who was the matinee street dance idol with Electric Boogaloo and Breaking, he starred in that. Fred Berry, who starred as rerun in What's Happening, was part of the group.
And
I was
he
part
shows
of the group.
he's one of the great examples of the idea that a large man can still really move.
That's right. That was the beginning of that too. That's right. I mean, we were all, we weren't so much a unison dance group as a group of soloists put together. Yeah. It's like a bunch of jazz musicians put together.
And so, did you fall in love with Don?
Well, I mean, we were all in love with the dance.
Yeah. It's interesting watching it, going from something like Viva Las Vegas, where there's not an off-white face in the bunch, and then seeing you're the sole white girl, right? In the Lockers.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. Was this something that you would see? Do you feel like television, you were all over TV?
Actually, that Roberta Flack special, I think, was the first time that there were more African Americans on stage as dancers than whites. Usually, like on Carol Burnett or on all those other TV shows, you had the white dancers with one black male and one black female.
Huh. And so
and we kind of switched it around. We swapped it. But you know what? The dancing was so insane.
Yeah.
If you see it, nobody even thinks about anything like that. They just go, what is this?
Okay, we're going to skip over because I would be here all night. I would love to talk to you.
I would love to talk
about your
each thing.
Okay. And then we're not going to talk about choreographing David Bowie's Diamond Dogs tour. We just don't have time.
Well, I think we should.
No,
Wait.
Okay, all right.
That's part of the problem. Is people know me as Mickey. They don't, and some people know the lockers. Some people know the movie stuff. Some people know my choreography career, which, my God, was Tina Turner, David Bowie, and Bette Midler. I mean, oh my God, I choreographed and co-directed their tours.
See, that's interesting because we're going to get to somebody else in a minute who you also choreograph. But if you're dealing with somebody like Tina Turner, who obviously, if you look at the old movies of Tina Turner, she has a style of her own. I mean, she can obviously dance and she can freestyle. When you're coming in to choreograph somebody like that, how much do they want from you? How much discipline do they want if they already have their own style?
What you do is give them back what they do great in a concept that flows with the show. You don't change Elvis's steps.
Right.
You don't change Tina's steps. Sometimes Tina would say, "Improvise, Toni. Let me just improvise to this song. I'll sing, and then we'll film it. And I want to do your choreography." And if I would improvise for her, I would improvise more in the Tina Turner style. With Bette, who's one of the maybe the greatest entertainers happening, it was a broader idea because we worked with comedy, we worked with drama, we worked with chorus girls.
Yeah.
I mean, each act, each star is a different personality, and you choreograph and develop for that personality. And if you try to get them to do something that isn't their genre, it's just stupid.
Can you describe what Tina's moves are, like the moves that are most recognized?
Well, Tina's moves started out as the greatest early 60s moves with the Ikettes ever. I mean, if you just Google Tina Turner, Ike and Tina Turner review with the Ikettes, it's jaw-dropping. It's like James Brown on the Tammy Show.
Yes.
Then when she left Ike, she wanted to change. I got a call from a friend of hers who said, "Tina's left Ike. When she starts to do shows again, she wants you to be her choreographer. Are you interested?" And I said, "Hell yes." And I worked with her for her first club act. We did Disco Inferno. Actually, the Disco Inferno, in What's Love's Got to Do with It, is my choreography that Angela Bassett does. So we developed a show for Tina that had guys and girls, and that had a wider idea of dance because she started to change her music. So of course you also choreograph for the music. She had new music. So it was not difficult to start changing things up. And we of course are guided by the music.
Okay, so SNL, Candice Bergen was the first person to host, and she hosted twice in the first season in 1975. But I was trying to figure out, I was like, you were on with both the Lockers and as a solo act, both in the first season, yes?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, I was on, Penny Marshall and Rob Reiner hosted the second Saturday Night Live, and they said, "We want the Lockers." And that's a really great number. So I did that, and by the time I was on Saturday Night Live as a singer, it was, I think, 1975 or 76, and I had left the Lockers, but was doing shows of my own, but was using, Shabadoo was in it, Don was in it. It wasn't like a great departure. It's just that it was time for me to sing and dance and do that American musical that my mother and father always thought I'd be doing.
Yeah. No, it was very much a departure. I'm going to play a couple seconds of it right now, actually.
When we bop, boom, bam, I can swing and I can jam. When we bop, boom, bam, I'm a killer delay, yes I am.
Wham Rebop.
Wham. This is Wham Rebop.
Wham Rebop.
And it was the first season. I
think
it was. So you're on twice, which I think is a huge accomplishment.
3 times. 3 times.
When were you on the third time?
Well, I did a concept of 4 street dancers and 4 classical ballet dancers dancing to classical music. So I had filmed a lot of that concept in rehearsal, and I brought it to Lauren, and I showed him the concept, and I said, I'd love to do this on your show. And one day Lauren said, you want to do a film of that Swan Lake piece? I said, hell yes. So we did that film on Saturday Night Live. Eventually, I redid the concept on the Smothers Brothers, and that concept was nominated for an Emmy.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna play a few bars of a song now. Okay, you choreographed David Byrne in his 1981 video for Once in a Lifetime, which is...
We choreographed and co-directed. I co-directed that with him.
And I think what's very interesting is if you look at the video and you've gone to see his show, American Utopia, I don't know whether he developed these moves while you were working together, whether this is something he came with. David Byrne is obviously like a real artist. When David Byrne comes to you and says, I want you to co-direct and I want you to choreograph, this is again like a question like the Tina Turner one. What did you help him do in that? Because it's...
Well, we asked. We all understood performance art at the time, improvisation, abstract filmmaking. I met him through Brian Eno, and they were recording Bush of Ghosts. And David had seen... I was already into filming and editing my videos. Hey, Mickey, Nobody, Little Red Book. And he saw it and he said, wow, for Once in a Lifetime, I'd like to do a video and I want you to work with me on it. Well, David, we don't work on steps. We work on concepts and acting pieces. And David had the idea of movement of people in trances. So we went to UCLA. We looked at a lot of footage of preachers, people in trances. And we started to develop movement based on that movement.
Like sort of the speaking in tongues, kind of fundamentalist, sort of that kind of stuff, or more African?
Yes.
And Africans?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah, because there's a footage of African dancers.
Yeah. Okay, you're right. Actually, there is. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Yes, of
I
course
know,
you're
I did.
right. And then he's got the move where it's like he's cutting his arm with one hand. Is that something that he...
That's right. That's a move that we saw that some kids from Japan sent some footage of that. So we used that. You know, when you create and develop, you create and develop ideas that have inspired you. Yeah. Sometimes you use ideas that you saw a year ago or 3 years ago, but you compile them all together, and that was that film.
These are amazing collaborations. Has there ever been a collaboration that for whatever reason you were like, this person can't dance, we're not seeing eye to eye? No, you've gotten along with everybody.
No, because people don't say, hey, make me dance like you. They say, develop a show for me. Yeah. Develop me.
Yes.
And that's what I feel like I'm good at, because I'm an improvisational artist too. Yeah. Hey, I came from vaudeville. Yeah. I studied dance, but I do understand improvisation and jazz.
Yes.
I just, and so I'm able to, whoever calls on me, if they're calling on me, they know I can do that. I mean, Quentin Tarantino called on me for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood because he knew that the film was going to take place in the late 60s and he knew I danced in it. Tom Hanks, That Thing You Do. He knew I choreographed, Shindig and choreographed in the 60s. I choreographed that.
Considering my obsession with the rest of Toni Basil's career, I actually have considered altogether skipping even talking about Mickey. But then I thought, who do I think I am? Tears for Fears? So here we go. Mickey was originally released in 1979 as Kitty by the English group Racy, and Toni put it on her album Word of Mouth. But it was Toni who happens to be responsible for the "Oh Mickey, You're So Fine" chant, which I think we can all agree totally puts the song over the top. And just this past May, Toni got a big victory in court relating to the copyright of the song. She's been litigating it since 2013, but now, finally, Toni Basil is the sole copyright owner of Mickey. Two persistent rumors about the song, which Toni has over the years dispelled. No, The song wasn't changed to Mickey in honor of the Monkees' Mickey Dolenz. And no, even though the lyric says, so come on and give it to me any way you can, any way you want to do it, I'll take it like a man. The song has absolutely nothing to do with anal sex, as the filthy-minded rock critic Robert Christgau once speculated it did. Okay, we have gotten to the point where I think that we have shown the broad range of the work and the incredible collaborations, the incredible work you've done. I want to talk about Mickey, 1982.
Okay.
I can't keep track of the lawsuits. I mean, I think at one point you said you didn't really make much money off of it. Is that the case? I mean, it was huge.
It's tricky. I've never seen any royalties. It's a European company.
And it was produced. There was a recent court case. Came out victorious. It seemed like there was a court case where the producer of it was suggesting that he had authorship somehow. Is that correct?
No, it was very frivolous of them. They did not want to lose Mickey. It's made them a fortune. And
Do you mean the record company?
Of course. And we won that case, and which is just the American side, meaning I can license in America 10 songs. They can't. But I won that case. They appealed it. And that appeal cost me a damn fortune, but I won the appeal. And now we're tying it up. I mean, they have awarded me the Masters, the American Masters, and now we're still tying up all the legal fees and all the money from. I mean, the legal fees of the appeal are astronomical.
You had a very good career up until that point. I don't know. Did you have was your business manager? Was it a bad contract that you signed? I mean, what?
No, it's everybody got screwed in the 80s.
Everybody got screwed in the 80s?
Well, an enormous amount of people, unless you were like the Rolling Stones who, opened up their own company,
right.
But look,
Everybody.
I went after the Mickey hit, I went right back to choreographing Bowie, Bet, and Tina.
Yeah. Well, no, I wanted to ask you this because it's very interesting because you had a thriving, you were not a household name. You were in projects that had been huge. But then at 30, it still sort of amazes me that you were 39 years old because you look like, you're wearing the cheerleader outfit and you got the pigtails. You could pass for 22. But you were 39. What does it feel like after having toiled for so long at 39 to be the toast of the town, the person everybody wants to get on the phone?
No, I got news for you. The thing is I haven't experienced until the last 10 years, the really fun of Mickey, because in making Mickey and doing my BBC specials and then promoting them in Australia and around, I never got to really experience at the time that it was number one, because I'm still working on the next thing. So I remember being in the UK and hearing footsteps, and I thought, gee, this is like when in the 60s I was hanging out with Mick and Brian Jones and you heard fans running after them. And I turned around and they were fans running after me because they had seen my special. Yeah. I was shocked.
Yeah. Did you like it?
I was shocked. So it's not until recently that the song has become such an anthem. Have I even had fun?
Have you even had fun? Is that a rhetorical question?
Have I even got to have fun experiencing this song being an anthem? It has not gone away.
No, it certainly hasn't gone away.
No, it hasn't gone away.
Toni, a few years ago, Quentin Tarantino brought you in to choreograph all the dance scenes in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You can be seen, actually. I tried to see it. Are you in the Playboy scene doing the twist with Margot Robbie?
No,
I can't see you.
I'm upstairs. I'm upstairs dancing with Sharon Tate in the plane.
Yeah, and you got Leo to do he did like a hullabaloo show, and he did sort of a kind of twist. Was he a good student?
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Oh, are you kidding me? It was like watching him shoot for that day was like me going to Juilliard for 4 years. Oh my God.
Did he put the moves on you? He has that reputation.
No.
No moves. Okay. If you will indulge me, can I play a little game with you?
No.
Come on, please. Here, can I tell you?
No.
Can I tell you what the game is first?
Sure.
It's a lightning round. I've gone through your biography. You've been called like the Zelig of show business. You've seen and known everybody. I wondered if I could say these names and you could tell me in 2 seconds if you.
No, I would prefer not to.
Okay, you don't want to do that, huh?
No.
I thought that sounded like fun.
Well.
All right, Toni. I read that you briefly. I don't know if it was brief or not. That you dated Jay Sebring, who the hairdresser who was killed by the Manson family, and it was what a terrible thing. But I wondered. I feel like you have met everybody in Southern California. Did you ever meet Charles Manson?
No. But I did hear he went through Topanga Canyon, but we didn't know him. No, I knew Jay, I knew Sharon, I knew Roman. We had dinners in Cannes when I was shooting a international German television special. So I knew everybody. So it was like an acid trip to do that film. I had been to that house when Terry Melcher lived in it.
Oh, really?
But I was never at the house when Sharon lived in it.
Wasn't that kind of the idea? Wasn't the idea Manson found it because he thought he had known that Terry Melcher had lived there, right?
Yeah, because I think he wanted Terry to record him. Yeah, and Terry decided not to. And
see, you don't.
There you go.
There you go. Recording artists, you can't turn your back.
Well, I don't know. You can't turn your back on the record companies, quite frankly.
Yeah. Well, I was glad to read of the recent victory. Toni, you deserve it. You are a great pleasure. I've really enjoyed this time. I don't know if you have, but I've enjoyed it. Did you enjoy it? I can't tell.
Sure, but I had fun fighting you.
Yes, we had a good time.
Yeah, no, because there's all these assumptions. There's assumptions that
you know what it is? Somebody like me who watches Easy Rider, you were like, God, if I were only a fly on the wall to watch what went down.
To assume that actors shooting an acid scene or a drunk scene are drunk.
You know what that speaks to?
It's not what we
great
go.
acting. Look at. I mean, I don't think Peter Fonda was. I don't know if he ever. Look, I watched Peter Fonda in that, and he looks really high. He looks like high as a kite.
Guess what? He's a damn good actor.
Yes, okay.
And that was the point.
Yes.
And for you to fight me on this,
I'm not fighting
is
you.
Shocking.
No, I'm not fighting. I love you. Come on. I thought we were kind of having fun, right? Toni, there. Toni.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are artists.
Yes.
We don't get drunk for a drunk scene.
Toni Basil, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this. I am.
Thank you.
It is a stunning, exciting career. It is like what I would give to have like ridden around in your head and done the things you've done and met the people you've met.
Thank you so much.
Really enjoyed it.
I really appreciate you covering, a wide scope of my career because as we talked about in the beginning, people know Mickey Lane or Choreography Lane or the Lockers, they don't put it all together.
You are a woman of many lanes.
Cutting edge of pop culture every decade.
Yes. I can't wait to see what you do in the 2030s.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Toni. That's our episode. And actually, come to think of it, that's our season. We plan on spending August sunning our carcass by a lake in Maine, absolutely hammered on fruity blender drinks. We're going to see you in the fall. If you liked this episode, please subscribe, rate, leave a review, and in honor of James Brown breaking vaudeville's rule of 3 in his Cape routine, tell 5 of your friends to spend the month catching up on the originals. This happens to be one of those episodes that makes me wonder why I didn't get into documentary film instead of podcasting. There is a lot from Toni Basil's career to see, and I'm going to link to a ton of it in the show notes. But you can also check out Toni's YouTube channel, Toni Basil's House, which I'll link to, which hosts an even more exhaustive collection of her career highlights. This episode was produced by myself, Andrew Goldman, as well as Rob Heath, who is currently out on bail after a misunderstanding involving him trying to introduce his signature dance, the Producy, to local elementary school kids. Special thanks to my good friend, the extraordinarily talented artist and embroiderer Richard Seja, who's always providing me with great ideas for subjects for the show, like this one. You really should check out his amazing work on Instagram. He can be found at Richard Seja, and that's spelled S-A-J-A. Big thanks to Kelly Anderson from Team Toni Basil and the whole team at Los Angeles Magazine, notably Silver Fox editor Mayor Rashawn. The Originals is, as always, a highly replaceable production.